Awesome. So pretty excited, joined by Preet. Probably one of the first guys who I felt like was really playing with new stuff. I know for me, you had a pretty good influence on changing how I started doing my practice before I went all the way into playing with what a lot of people are playing with now. I was really curious. So I know, like, what would you say the split is in your teaching between like your regular students and abroad? Because you do so many camps, seminars, things like that. What's your breakdown like in terms of with your regular student base or like a traveling student base?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand also the method. I'm always more comfortable talking about using constraint-led method, not ecological approach, because ecological approach also, I think when Greg said it consists also differential learning,
Hmm.
and that is basically science fiction. And how they teach and what kind of results they get, it's really fascinating, but I'm not there yet. So I'm comfortable, yeah, using the term constraint-led method or approach. But so. I think because of the format is different in during the weekends when I'm traveling, there is usually typically Saturday, is 2 by 2 hours, and Sunday 2 by 2 hours. Then it tends to be like Sunday is one topic and Saturday is other topic. So I have 4 hours to teach, so to speak, yeah,
Hmm.
or to let things emerge. It's more popular way of saying these days. So I still like, I do straight arm turtle. I've done that already 18 times, like different seminars, different places. And it all right away starts with games. So it's like, but I mean, seminar format, what's difference is, you go there. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's a show, but, people get to know me. I explain myself. They haven't heard my jokes, so I have to do a couple of them. So it's a little bit also like I'm not saying entertainment part, but it's more like
Hmm.
why we do it, what led me to discover this turtle, how I played. So I'm trying to also give them context, obviously,
Hmm.
why this is happening. So and also because it's I wouldn't say it's pretty intense, but it is a live work with the different constraints. So it's 4 hours, 2 by 2. So I'm trying to pace it also. That's why I like to have those talking sections between because they have to,
Hmm.
survive 4 hours, and we want to keep that nobody has some nagging injuries and twisting, twisting wing fingers. So in that sense, I pace it. So that's why I find times to explain why this happened and why that happened. But in my regular classes, I'm moving towards, let's say, I'm moving towards speaking less,
Hmm.
and I just recently today just my buddy Ronald pointed out that today I was like a shot like a I don't know like a shotgun all the games and stuff to just like I talked he was like you talked for yourself, you talked very little today, and I was like, yeah, I'm trying. So because clearly I like to explain things and I like to explain why they're doing this game example and and it's just like, oh, let's play the game. I'm also trying to explain, a little bit the context, what we're looking for here, and so there is tendency maybe to, yeah, like explain. So in the classes, obviously I don't, you know, explain that much. Let's say like in a seminar, so there's no entertainment part that much. Class starts, and then we have 1 hour class, and then we roll after that. So it's clearly, I would say, it's maybe even more intense than would be
Hmm.
like 2 by 2 hour seminar because we have 1 hour basically. Maybe sometimes we do like 45 minutes, and then we have a fixing mistakes section in the end. 15 minutes we nerd out, talk about details, talk about what
Hmm.
happened, how to fix it. So, but we can go intense, but it doesn't mean like full sparring in that sense. People always think, is it 100%? It's like, well, even sparring is not always 100%. It's the potential
Hmm.
of going 100%. And so drills are also very specific. And yeah, so there is a definitely different format to teach. And that's also what I'm trying to advocate when people talk to me about the method is like no, it's not like one way. You can use it more talkative method, less talkative method, but if you keep it, it's not like, oh, you should explain anything or you should let everything emerge. I'm not in that camp yet. It's like
Hmm.
I'm more like, there is a gray area, is, what can we do, you know? So it shouldn't be like, oh, you should talk less as possible and let everything. No, you know, I'm not there yet. So maybe in coming years I will get there, and I feel like okay. Like recently, just recently in 2 weeks I've been thinking about it, that teaching the full game in my classes. Yeah, every class, like Saurus promotes. First, like 6 months ago when we started in August, I think, teaching this way, I didn't understand that at all, because I didn't understand how you have the time to do it, you know? Because if you, let's say, talk about half guard passing, let's say, or something, you know, and hour goes really fast with different games, you know?
Right.
But now I think we've been doing the mount survival and stuff recently, 2 weeks. And I think by now teaching this, and tomorrow is actually last class of that cycle. And I'm actually feeling that now I've taught it like 4 classes. Now I've seen what happens. Now I can come up with actually better games, and I can shortcut certain developments, having that experience, that if I would teach it again, maybe I would teach it like shorter, you know? So I wouldn't spend like that much time in a class teaching it, because I know what kind of games people need. I know one of games I did maybe wasn't that good of the games, you know, and I would maybe even like get to a certain point in a class and then stop. You know, obviously I could, you know, if you do half an hour, you reach a certain goal, but if you do an hour, you know, half an hour more, you can go further. But is it really necessary? Because there's always the amount of adaptation people can handle, you know. And now I actually feel like, yeah, like a couple of weeks, like seeing this, I was like, okay, now I start to see like how this full game can fit in an hour actually. So I'm trying to right now take a courage, you know, and start adding maybe in the end 15-20 minutes of the class. Let's say we do the mount escape, so that's basically I'm teaching top and bottom at the same time. And then maybe do some guard work, you know, in end 20 minutes. So people can have certain, like, you know, keep the legs away, certain like a baseline drills for guard retention, guard passing, you know, that we can just play, and it kind of resets the class a little bit. And because I see, like, you know, a lot of people coming in, and like, you know, the always criticism has been that the 2 weeks you do mount, but other skills are diminishing a bit, you know. So it's keeping everything alive, and at the same time kind of juggling that. It seems like chaos and stuff, but I'm starting to see how that's possible, because I have more time left in the classes, because I've learned to do less and maybe better. And so that's interesting. In our seminars, obviously, I don't have to do that, because I have to have a topic. I don't have to teach everything, you know.
Right.
So that format still is different. But in a classes, it seems like these coming weeks, I will move towards trying to teach everything. And then I know Francesco Fonte is like, he has some 20 minutes still. Maybe he has changed now, but he had 20 minutes in the end of the class. He had specific things, you know, like let's do arm bars, let's do this, let's do that, you know, different kind of sections of the game, everything very short. So he was just pushing the like variability in the end a lot, you know. And maybe I start slower, you know, just, you know, open guard, some, you know, keep the toes pointed away from me, you know, and get to the knee line and those kind of things, you know. Other person keeps the aim, because those games really help. And I think, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Like I think we started in August, so it's been already August, September, October, November, December, January. So it's been 6, and now seventh month is going. So I'm actually happy. So I want to go slowly in. All this first, when we started, we were so confused. We were actually afraid. Is this eco? Is that eco? You know, is this allowed? That allowed? And because I don't like actually what's the online presence at the moment. A little bit what I've seen, it's very confusing actually. There's like, I always talk to Francesco about it, that they should be like beginner templates. How to start with this, you know, that you do most things right. And I guess, you know, I haven't watched the video. I know Souders watched some games and criticized some games, you know, but somebody sent them. because I would also say, like, with somebody more eco guy would watch my games, maybe, oh, this game is wrong, that game is wrong. I don't care at the moment,
Hmm.
because it's all about me being, teaching. And I mean, I teach, I understand what I do better, and what I should aim for. So definitely feedback is good, but I feel like my thing is right now I really want to just keep teaching and self observe what's going on, and adapt to this, and obviously I read and talk to people, and but I'm taking the very slow route in, so to speak.
Hmm. It's very interesting. Something you mentioned there is that initial concern of like, is this eco? Is this the right thing? And to me, like, that was never really like a concern, but I see it on the internet a lot. Partly because of the way some things are communicated. I feel like people
Yeah.
feel like if you tell them the steps, you've ruined, the sanctity of eco, for example, or whatever. But for me, I'm very much more along your lines. Like, I'm happy to provide context. I'm happy to show where this fits in the grand scheme and talk about it. And like, we'll workshop something afterwards. Now, you sort of mentioned like in the beginning, what was your application like? Like, where did you start? Because you talk about being confused a little bit and trying to edge that line. So, like, where did you find comfortable to start, and where would you start now? Sort of thinking back.
Honest answer is I don't know what was the first topic,
Hmm.
what I taught. I remember clearly still this day that I messed up like really badly some half card stuff. I ruined basically 3 or 4 classes in a row,
Hmm.
and I was like trying to give them specific task in half card, keep them flat or something, as a top person, keep the bottom flat. But that turned out, in my head, it was a good idea because that's what it kind of is. But it turned out to be a totally wrong idea that very few people got. That it kind of have to make person flat, and so what's I would answer this, and you can, like, force me to the right track of this question. But first, what's confused me was I really enjoyed the terminology of you have to teach function. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that was the point, that okay, and now I was starting to question everything I did, because I haven't been taught function. Okay, I'm in half guard. Those are 3 techniques.
Hmm.
And obviously, if I get a crossface underhook and let's say, but I know the passes, and doing this for years, I know how to stabilize myself in top, and everything. But if you ask me what I'm doing, I'm like,
Hmm.
I actually don't know, maybe. I just feel I keep you there, but you go like, what are you aiming, Preet? What is the function of this? And then from where do you pass? I was like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing. I guess I'm keeping you here a little bit. I don't allow you to put hooks in. And it was all like technical answers.
Hmm.
And it's that was super confusing to start asking questions. Okay, what is the function of this? And because I have to teach function. And not just put your arm there, put your arm there. And so
Hmm.
that was, I think, that throw me off, because I would not say that nobody taught me function and I don't know anything, but in many cases I was like, okay, what's the function? Like Souders has a famous armbar stuff, like the invariance,
Hmm.
So okay, it's not an armbar. It's like, okay, I'm pinning you down. I'm separating the arm from the anything attachment. I'm trying to hyperextend the elbow. So those are the functions, what I'm trying to do.
Hmm.
But it's a very different way to start thinking this way. That kind of, if somebody asks, okay, what is an armbar? So then I know we did some guard stuff, and then it actually was like, okay, if people tried armbar, usually, they're squared up and they try to put in a guard. They try to put the
Hmm.
leg over the face, and, the armbar is all messed up and the elbow comes out. But then I was starting telling them, oh shit, but try to get to the shoulder line first, you know?
Hmm.
And then if I set the shoulder line, actually people started to rotate under, you know,
Hmm.
because they were looking for shoulder line. So that was the function, like also like, that was the information from the armbar videos and stuff, because it was very, very, like, I was so confused about, because the guidelines usually, okay, put the leg over the face, in a guard. That's not the function. So what
Yeah.
they're trying to do is like, okay, try to get to the shoulder line. How? Try to get both shoulders under control. Okay, I have to goddamn rotate now. then the rotation happens itself. You don't have to teach people rotate, you know. Usually how you teach guard, you know, there's like a different armbar videos in YouTube. They teach steps, but they never explain that, you know, kind of like the function of this, you know. And then you know, oh, put the leg on the hip and do this and that. There's like you memorizing steps without knowing. But it's just, I was amazed sometimes that when the function was right, how it created a action that I wanted, you know. I didn't have to tell them to rotate. They figured it out maybe themselves a little bit, or started to figure out, and then I nudged them a bit. So I think first that was very hard. And also, like you mentioned, like eco people make it really strict, like, oh, you can't tell anything, and don't guide them and don't tell them. And first, if you're not familiar with this, it's like very confusing. Then how do I teach, you know? So that's why I'm advocating, like, there should be a beginner template. I can tell, you know, what should I change that give me the most benefit a buck, but I can still talk here or there from my old habits, and then slowly change and give less directions, you know, or something. Because I think the communication is one of the, you know, as an Estonian who has a very hard time communicating with people, I think communication from that kind of eco movement is one that I think is little bit, I think, lacking. And you know, like you have those internet conversations about, oh, it's just a positional sparring, and you say, oh, it's not a positional sparring, you know, because everything can be positional sparring, you know, in that sense. So in my way is like, I think we can have, you know, that's, you know, Sauter says no drilling, you know, but you can go like, you know, dead drills, live drills, task focused drills. You can have positional sparring as very abstract, side control, top, bottom, and, you know, escape or submit. You can have task focus sparrings, you know. So I think like a lot of terminology goes to lost, and I had very hard time actually with this, that we were so confused with Ronald when we started, and how do I teach? What can I say? Can I say something? And we were trying to, like, you know, like a gospel, you know. And then we found out, oh, it's actually, you can do this. And Rob Gray even said, yeah, you can give them direction and stuff. It's the question was where it's coming from, you know. And if they don't get it, you can still give them, and next time don't give them direction, you know, if you find a better way. So I think it was for us what was very much set in stone. And so then we understood that, yeah, you can give, and if it's not super eco, you know, who cares? You know, it's better than before. And I think certain freedom came after maybe teaching it. Our gym, I think it took 2 months. I think it took me and the people to adapt, like it was 2 months. Because everybody kind of treated this classes as positional sparring, and then it went super hard. And then they started to understand kind of how to train and everything else, and, you know. So I think it was a like adaptation period of 2 months, and messing up a lot of classes. I still do, but it's, and so I got better at this. So I always almost feel like you have to teach this way. I don't know how long, and then maybe you start to teach automatically better. But let's say with mount stuff, I clearly needed the experience to see what kind of games create what kind of behavior, and then I can, next time I do it better, you know. So it's would be very hard to like tell me maybe, or even like I have a lot of conversation with Francesco with this. It's like, Francesco, tell me 3 games how you do half guard, and Francesco says, well, I can't tell you because every group is different. And if I start with one game, I watch the groups, what they're missing. Maybe the second game is different in one group than in a second group, you know? So, and that I think makes the method complicated a bit, because I think at the moment, I think there still should be some beginning templates. The games can really like maybe broad, and you can't go wrong with them. And then you learn to make like more adjustable, adaptable games to that specific group, you know, and maybe even do better classes. But I think it really helps that I know in Eco Discord, I'm actually not there because there's too much talking there. It's tiring actually, and I chose the path of that. Okay, I want to teach, I want to mess it up myself, you know, I want to learn from my experience. And talking about it, like having endless conversations about it, I don't think it helps really. I think it comes down to really seeing other people teaching this way and be taught teaching this way yourself. I think those are one of the best ways, and you have access. I have access to a couple of people, example to Francesco, who teaches this way, and we just have a lot of conversations about it. But yeah, so I'm actually turned away a little bit from online,
Mm-hmm.
because Souders having like a every other day is a podcast out. I can't listen to that all the time as much as I love him. But I've taken the other route rather by teaching. So that's been my experience at the moment in 7.5 months.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned there is I really do think that there's a little bit of a diminishing return on the research and the reading and the conversation and like the theory. It's important, but I think like most people who just read How We Learn to Move, and then you got to get in the lab and like play with it.
Yeah.
Because I found that the biggest coaching challenge is two things. One is when we get to our level, there's so much juice that we've already just subconsciously started doing. Like when you described what you're doing in the half guard, I know for me, I had to become a lot more like aware. But secondly, is the language is so important of when you explain your game and like their intention and attention. Like I'm sure you found in, week one, session one of your mount games, you used certain cues and ideas. And then by, week two, session four, you probably are using different language because you saw, when I said that, these
Yeah.
guys, they sort of did this, and I think that's something that is, it's the biggest challenge because it's very easy to say do A, B, C, D, E, right? It's harder to like not give a clue, but to like give the idea, the concept, that big focus point. And I think sometimes that can be what makes the idea of like, I think that's why some people like push back on the templated games, like, oh no, you got to make your own games and such. But I agree, that's a very hard place to start from. Is like, if I have to, one, all of a sudden really understand mechanical, like what's happening, the function, the effect we're creating, and be able to communicate myself, that's pretty daunting. And like, you're a guy who I already know is a pretty good communicator, really good at like understanding a lot of those things, and we can still hit that initial wall of
Yeah.
like perceived complexity.
I
Now, one
have.
thing you
Yeah.
sort of mentioned that your
Yeah. Go on.
friend
Go
sort
on.
of
Sorry.
does
Yeah.
is the idea of like, and I do something very similar to what Francisco does, where he has like an initial game and he sort of adjusts on the fly for what he does for the next iteration or something. And I think that is sort of the thing that would make more sense as a templated thing, because there's very basic sort of like first contact, first engagement games in a certain scenario that are fairly universal. Like the way you describe, like, that basic guard game, hey, standing versus supine, keeping the feet and knees pointing away from you as often as you can. Like some of those, I think we could really communicate at scale because
Hmm.
it doesn't really depend on your understanding or your room. That's almost always true as a first engagement sort of
Yeah.
idea. But there's still sort of the online community pushback against, can't template it out. But like there has to be gray. And I agree with you
Yeah.
in
It's
that sense. There has to be
yeah.
gray.
And I think there has to be like a easy way to get people in, that because
Mhm.
obviously maybe you also know that there's a lot of pushback in online, eco guys are called cultists, and everything else. And I don't, it's funny also, but I don't think it's also good, and it's a problem of eco people, like
Mhm.
maybe just black and white, But there's a wiggle room, and there's way to talk about it, and maybe even like I think I told the Souders this, but I always mentioned that he has all the videos, no technique, no drills, yeah.
Mhm.
But he has to know it's misleading, because you could call it like a don't dead drill. We do task focused drills. We
Mhm.
can use the language that's already established. So we don't have to learn new like people do. People get like I say, we get people more in with a language they already know. Oh, you do task
Mhm.
focused drills, or dead drills or alive drills, and then technique. We actually had the conversation over a year ago now with Souders, because I remember that clearly. We had it took me a year to actually start teaching this way. I was like back and forth, and we had some WhatsApp calls with Souders and stuff. And I asked him like, okay, you say no techniques, but then like, but what came actually out of this was that we haven't established a definition. What you think about what is a technique and what I think about what is a technique. And
Mm.
then I was like, okay, what do you consider technique? And he was like, technique is a step-by-step introduction or instruction, you know? I was
Mm.
like, what? Okay, now I get it, you know? Because we don't do any techniques. We don't do step-by-step instruction. But I would say like, just being in X guard,
Mm.
not even sweeping from X guard. For me, X guard is also technique maybe, you know?
Mm.
It's like we were like, now I get your point, because yeah, I agree with you that maybe no step by step instruction is not the best way, because every step is a resistance and then game goes everywhere, and after that I was like, okay, because he also said to me that if the outcome is one, so to speak, if the arm
Mm.
triangle out, if you're in really end range of arm triangle, side control arm triangle, and if the outcome is one, there is no
Mm.
choice, then he can give specific instruction.
Right.
And I was like, well, but no, that is important message, that it's kind of also missing in the communication. And so I was like, okay, now I start to understand how you do it, because I'm from SPG background, and
Mm.
we do progressive drilling and stuff and everything, so we were close, let's say. And now I was like, you can't do, it cannot be like you're doing alien shit, So we're still doing jiu-jitsu, so there's something like I'm misunderstanding about communication. And after Sauter said to me, yeah, we don't do step-by-step instruction, and I can give specifics when it's the choice is, I think, the one, whatever, there's basically no
Mm.
choice. And I was like, okay, now it makes sense, and I can understand you. And then all the drilling stuff, no drilling, no, task focus drills, or how they call it, grills, like a games.
Mm.
And after that, I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere, like we established the baseline, how we understand, but in that sense, I think he does it purposely, and like the way he's passionate. I understand him. I like him. I know a lot of people who's like turned down by the way he communicates, but I understand. I
Mm.
actually appreciate his character, the passion he has. But so for me, those things like the communication, like I'm explained right now, or this is eco, this is not. So that was the biggest hurdle, that I want to do it, but it's like everything was like, don't do this, don't do that. That is not eco. That is not pure eco. And even the Ed Inga Mels, yeah, who's
Mm.
now in the eco version of the world, England, like a Italy camp, and also now he comes to he will be also in March in US, I think.
Mm.
And even he said in a one podcast, like I think he has practiced the longest, I think, amongst us that I know, like me, Francesco, and Inga Mels, and Chris Payne that I will meet. And he even said it's very, very hard to do like a full eco class. And I was like, okay, that this guy is saying that. So, and I really think, for me at least, my experience as I know it right now, I think, there's always like information processing, and then it's like a eco, I think it's the class actually will be a combination. I think it's like, let's say, mostly eco and then some information processing, but whatever, I feel it like it's not the worst combination, It's not like I want to have the information processing there, but there is also time to talk about details, you know?
Mm.
There is like, if I give you 45 minutes context, we can nerd out about details and why this, that, and we can communicate on that level, because both of us has context now, So there's certain things. Yeah, for me, those things I've discovered were not like, at least for me, clearly communicated. That even like, is it pure eco? Is it like okay to do a little bit this, that? Because at the end of the day, it's just a method. It shouldn't be like, oh, it's like a cult, or it's like a very strict. We're teaching jiu-jitsu, and we're using different methods, and none of the methods are perfect in that sense. Yeah. So in the end of the day, you're using combination of stuff to deliver, and then you see what kind of method works best. So I think the wiggle room there was really calming factor for me. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, I will feel and see, and and see how other people do it, and how much they explain and do not explain. the Kit Dale and Souders podcast. So Kit Dale, in that sense, I think is not very informed of that science side, and Souders is very informed. But it's still, Kit was able to train himself really well, and I guess trains others without knowing that deep stuff and is it really eco or not eco. He was also doing task stuff, and so I think we need that kind of Kit Dale version also. Let's say if you wouldn't mind. That it's like simple ideas and let's do it. It's already better than teaching 3 techniques out of your ass, So I think that's been my overall kind of like experience with this, and I'm happy where my journey is with this, and I'm also happy maybe overall what's coming out of this, and maybe we need that eco movement to settle a bit, to calm down a bit, and then we'll see who's left and what's left of the method. And right now it's maybe too much hype, and there's some fighting going on in the internet, and I think it's necessary maybe, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of interesting things, and one thing is this idea of like details, and you mentioned like, hey, in certain really discrete situations, end stage of a submission, yes, there are very clear things that might matter, but I find a lot of people get hung up like, can I share detail? But the real question I think that they should be asking is, when should I share that detail? Yes. And for me, it's after they've experienced the problem, tried to play with it. So for me, lots of times in my application, I like to play the exact same game with the same constraints, but with group feedback between rounds just while they're switching partners. So we're finding new partners, but I saw this now. Remember, like, you really need to focus on clearing that connection, whether it's moving yourself away or passing it by. Like, there's a place for those details, but I think people get like shy about, they don't know, like, we're so used to the details being front loaded, right? It doesn't mean we go from front loading it to not at all. I think it's just understanding that your details have to be responsive to something, because that was the big like initial pushback is, hey, we tell people all this stuff and they haven't even tried it. It doesn't mean that now we don't tell them. It's just you have to tell them a little bit after, and for me, that's been super successful. Hey, I see a recurring problem. Let me just explain what that problem is. It doesn't mean I'm saying, hey, to solve this problem, do A, B, C, and D. But I'm saying, hey, this problem exists because of the connection they have, or this angle that they have, or this, right? And hey, think of creating this effect back in them. I'm essentially communicating those details, but only after they've touched, after they've felt the fire, and then they have to figure it out, and I think sometimes that hangs people up.
So that was also like you said, missing part that, yes, like always, like eco guys get always the question, like, when do you teach specifics, It's always comes up, when do we teach this? When do we teach the knee slide, Actually, after we've done the drill, pushing the toes away and stuff, and when there's opportunity, we end up between the legs, Now that, pass expression happens, and if you do it a couple of times, on your own and with certain restrictions, we can talk about that more precisely, but you have to get there first, And without you getting there, actually, there's no point talking about it because you can't get there, I can also just force the game, because now I'm really intrigued about, because it's just the terminology affordances, This is like the eco stuff. And so it's like, I don't know which one is right, because I like both. Let's say, we talked a bit Souders, like, I want to teach arm drag, Eco guys is like, but why do you want to teach arm drag? Like, make arm drag emerge. I'm like, oh my God, it's a functioning technique. It's like teaching arm bar. You will teach arm bar to people. Why not teach arm drag, You don't make arm bar appear or emerge. You teach them the arm bar with those constraints, So, but also I think that, I might also get it wrong. So the terminology of affordances, it means that, let's say if people, there's decoupled exercises and coupled. Let's say if you're like, lifting weights, if you're stronger, you will see more opportunities to jump. Yeah. Let's say if you know a cartwheel, like if you do like a decoupled exercises of animal movements, acrobatics, and you will see more cartwheel passes because you know cartwheels. So it's not like to wait until the cart good in cartwheels, and then you see cartwheels happening. So for me, it would be like I can do a games starting from arm drag, as creating that affordance for you and teaching you how to fight and win, whatever from arm drag. And then if you fight, you will see more opportunities of arm drags because you already done that. It's not that we do play a game and then suddenly you do a move that resembles arm drag, and now I'm like, see that? Now it's time to talk. I can force that affordance. So for me that is very confusing because I can also force a knee slide. I can we can start from position when you have only ankle in, you have a knee slide position, ankle is in, and you have upper body control. And we can learn how to finish the pass from there. Kick the ankle out and you pass. Then I can start a little bit between the legs, but still in a position I can win from, But there's more like a shin bone there, maybe, And then if I make you good in that position, you will start to see more knee slides in open guards because you're already good at this. So for me, it's a little bit, that is also confusing that I don't also care about the right answer in that sense at the moment. But you can do drills, and then people start to pass certain way, and then it's good time to talk about stuff, because it emerged, that problem. Or you make people good at that first, and then you let them play the game, and then you just find the knee slide anywhere, So I think both, in a way, I think both methods are useful. And right now, I don't know. I even think that the game where nothing works, you don't know any passes, I think it's that more beginner friendly, it doesn't make sense to teach people like beginner's knee slide right away with a lot of details, there's more benefits, I think, start from open guard and get to the knee line and, build it more abstract way. But I think we can build the game from both ends, We start from the end, move back to complexity, or we start for the biggest complexity and we'll see what kind of passes emerge. So I think that is also, I don't see discussed much because I know people in eco teach arm bars, and they don't just go like side control and see how you like to, submit people. I give you the end goal, and then if you have the end goal, you will find the means to get there, So that's the same way with knee slides. So I feel I haven't heard discussions about that so much because I will teach you a technique of knee slide with a constraint and with resistance, obviously. So but we'll get to this, and it comes with just teaching more, and then hopefully I get to see more people who do this method, and then then we'll see. So I have a lot of questions that I don't mind the answers yet.
So what you talked about there is super interesting because I tackle that problem of the arm drag or like a Russian tie, these are they're known effective connections, just like when you're talking about like X guard, that's a known effective set of connections. I'm not going to leave that up to happenstance. If I can shortcut, because here's one thing is like, if one of our premises is that this is going to accelerate your learning, I don't necessarily have to completely be like hands off. So what I've sort of done and talking about like how to bridge that gap is I will usually do a really broad game. So maybe if I'm talking in like a standing scenario, let's talk arm drag, standing arm drags, I'll play a very broad first contact game where we're fighting for better head position, better hand position broadly, just to get them in that. And then we'll go to the most narrow standing position, which is where one person has completely dominant connections. And then we're working from there. And I've done a very similar thing for passing. Hey, we'll play maybe a passing game where the first one is top player. Your goal is to either have an inside foot, one foot splitting the legs, or both feet outside the legs, right? And we'll play that just as like I like to think of it as just a way to get you like calibrated to the guard scenario quickly. Let's get some touches. It's just like, you're just playing around a little bit. And then, okay, next thing, now we're going to start hip post, knee block, shin on their thigh, and this is our next series of games. And that's been how I've sort of bridged that gap that you're talking about. Because for me now, we've run like every session for like 18 months. So every day, 5 classes a day, all ages, and we've really been playing with that. And for us, that's been how we want to pass along those very like discrete things, because there are certain snapshots. If you took a frame by frame of jiu-jitsu, we're like, this one is always good. Not always good, but it is generally effective. An arm drag is generally effective. A front headlock, those things are, they should be touched on a lot. Because the other thing is, our goal is to give people enough touches in a scenario that they can become more aware of all the outcomes and how it feels and the tension that happens in there. So for us, like, that's how I want to do it. I want to start you sometimes as proximate to the goal where, it's heavily favored, 80% in my favor, you have a 20% sort of chance, and then we'll move from there. And I think that's something that needs to also be discussed, is this like a continuum of like connections, and just knowing that like, hey, there's a time to play very open where it's, hey, first contact, etc. And that's great for beginners. That's actually also great for advanced, experienced players. But there is this time, and I find mostly when either I'm trying to introduce something new to the room, or, the level is lower experiential wise, hey, I'm going to go way more to highly connected with one person having an advantage, and that's sort of how I... Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, I find this very natural, because now my guys, when we come out weeks later and we play that same basic hand fighting head position game, they're naturally hand fighting to a Russian tie, because they know that's been effective, because they did that weeks prior as a really effective connection from the feet, and that's been like how I've sort of approached that, because there are things that are worth naming. And sometimes this is something that bugs me a little bit on the internet when it comes to like eco discussion, is people are like, oh, I try to not label anything. I try to like not label the pin or not label this. And I get your idea, but I think you're misconstruing your intent. The label is not ineffective. I think labeling is effective, because all it is I'm telling you a snapshot of those connections. Right? A snapshot of the alignment. It's just a quick way to describe two people's stances in a moment, right? And that's a big part. Like language, the reason language is so effective is because we have the ability to take a big idea and make it 2 syllables, and so often I find that like I'm in discussions with, oh, I don't want to label a De La Hiva hook. I want to just say like yes and no, right? But the other thing too is like, if I don't label it, and my goal is for you as my student to be able to go out and be an engaged learner on your own and explore jiu-jitsu, I'm not even giving you the first thing you got to type into Google if you want to learn more on your own, right? If you want to explore the possibilities. And sometimes I think that's like a huge shortcoming, is like this aversion to being descriptive, but it shouldn't be, I feel like it's a major mistake.
So that's what I mean, the terminology, even that drills and no drills, I think we have to use the language what we have, Clearly, like, I agree with you, if you don't mention De La Riva, because it is an outside hook, But you have to kind of say, oh, people call it De La Riva, So I think, it's like a middle way, like De La Riva, it's outside hook, It's like, I think Greg made jokes about like, what is outside ashi? Is this outside ashi, this outside ashi, this, or do we even use Japanese terms or whatever, So I think in the future we learn to compromise, and it seems that, like you said, giving context, and there is a way to do it. And outside, at least for me, when I jumped in, it was like, I didn't feel it was okay, and when we gave a little bit context details, we felt like, oh, it's not eco, or so, but it's kind of hard to get everything, so, and I think there should be like, I don't know, eco for beginners, for dummies or something, and it's do this to this, don't worry about that, you get good at this, so I think it's always maybe asked people too much perfection right away, oh, it's not eco, it's not pure eco. Should it be, and that's why I'm looking forward to see other classes using this method, because sometimes I would think, oh, but in my mind, it's not eco, but you call it eco, or something. So I want to see the classes, because I think there's a lot of wiggle room, obviously, And I think what's missing from internet is right now, we want to see Greg Souders full long classes.
Mhm.
And what's missing is his 17 minutes classes is not giving the full review, you know? And
Mhm.
so that's why I know some friends of mine actually want to go to Souders' gym also, to just for a week to see how he's teaching regular classes, because so I think what's missing is I would watch them, like it's an hour, but I would definitely watch them, like good guys that are well versed and respected by community, that they are they know the method. I would like to see their classes like a full long without any edit, like 1 hour class with all the drills and text, and like on different topics also. I would definitely watch it. So I think this, for me at least, is what is missing, because sometimes the way people explain stuff and how they do classes, it sounds like too perfect, it's impossible. I don't see this class ever being reality, because the way they talk about stuff, and also like to counter your arm drag, or even my theory about arm drag teaching, is wrestlers actually do it. I think, as much as I know, they just watch what people get randomly good at, and then okay, you got good in headlock, you got good in arm drag, you get good in double leg, whatever, and let's spend time polishing that because it came naturally for you,
Mhm.
because the problem also with the Russian Thai or arm drag is you funnel people, because if you keep the game open, everybody kind of develops their own way, and then you have variety in a class also, and then you go like, okay, this guy does more arm drags, this guy does front headlocks, not everybody has to do everything. So
Mhm.
there's a problem also with teaching specifics, because maybe this guy would discover arm drag by itself, and that guy discover front headlock itself, and then we play off that, and
Mhm.
certain people develop their strengths, or I make people better at this, and then we do games that they find this option. So that seems more like also funneling. And also, I'm not, in that sense, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm disagreeing with myself. Is like that seems also less eco, you know. So again, but I'm not worried about this, because I also agree with you that certain things we know that are effective, you know. But with this, we know this is effective theory comes. It's hard when we teach this what is effective. I think it's hard to come up with novel things,
Mhm.
because if you let people new, we will have different kind of attack systems, you know, because if people are let loose. But if you teach them what is effective, we kind of box them a little bit, and
Mhm.
obviously in that box they can find new ways. But like Joseph Chen guard passing, yeah, that he did in ADCC.
Mhm.
Like my question to the jiu-jitsu world is, how the hell we don't have this, how the hell one guy just comes and then teaches us to pass, and everybody's like, wow, we haven't never seen this,
Mhm.
that's the only that my explanation is, he was not put in a box,
Mhm.
he was just playing around and came up with a guard that allows to step over Langaker's guard that nobody never does,
Mhm.
and I know he's very, very high level, and he just stepped over his guard to mount. What the hell, And then it's
Mhm.
like, now it's like, oh, this is new way, and this is like this and that. But if we teach what's effective, then we have guys doing knee slides effectively, And we will have a lot of knee sliders or arm draggers. But the question is also, how do we create more Joseph Chens? That like, if I just this is the problem with specifics and broad open guard game and teaching specifics things, that that's, I have the same problem, that I know what's effective, but also I would have to let people play around with certain openness, and
Mhm.
there is a slight chance, not everybody develops their new passing idea and then changes the world, Joseph Chen kind of did it in a way, and he came up with something that people, I was like, what the hell, so how do we create also that exception will emerge more often than not, And by
Mhm.
teaching, so that's what my issue is with the specifics and also broad. So I'm for both things. And what's the ratio, or So I know Joseph is also kind of like experimenting, feeling,
Mhm.
developing, working, and now he tries to explain how he does, and people are trying to mimic him, but maybe not even having the same success, because he seems to have sort of feeling, and it's
Mhm.
hard to pass, you know. So that is also I'm trying to understand, I guess, in my future coaching, you know, how like do we let people lose, or when do we let people lose certain level, you know. Are beginners more, you know, I give them more, like you said, arm drag, and then in certain, I don't know, purple belt level, high blue belt, we start to let them more loose, you know, and
Mhm.
play around and get out of the box a little bit. Because when you start teaching physics and math, you also box people a bit, you know.
Mhm.
But end physics and end math is crazy. It's like nothing is sure. 2 by 2 is not 4 anymore, you know. But
Mhm.
first we start to certainty, you know. So maybe there's a time to just funnel out, and then, you know, crazy things happen, and then we can have Joseph Chen, you know, we can multiply different people, you know, that become that level and innovators, so to speak.
Mhm.
So, so yeah.
It's interesting because I was talking with Greg a little bit about this on our conversation, and he is like very much not into trying to funnel anyone into create any particular type of style or whatever. Whereas for myself, when I think of how do I want to, communicate and share jujitsu with these people, I really think of styles not as like, hey, I want you to do these things, but this is an approach to passing. Like there's people who are body lock players, and and then I'll design a session around the skills that make an effective person at body locking, and the skills around that. But then like I'll rotate the style. So hey, we'll have a focus of maybe more games that are conducive to you becoming a body lock player. Doesn't mean my whole lesson is, hey, we're very discreet on body lock passing. We're going to talk about shelving the foot, splitting the foot. I won't get that deep, but we'll play games, around that area to sort of allow for that full spectrum. But it's interesting because, yes, do we run a risk of funneling? I think I think the big solution there is that variation and the frequency at which you hit variation. Because if,
Hmm.
let's say, because just think all the different approaches to passing a supine guard. There's loose outside passing, there's stepping in the middle and then float passing, there's classic headquarters, sort of those situations. Those are all very distinct sort of styles to approach trying to pass a guard. I can do those in 3 subsequent weeks as long as supine versus standing is my core focus, right? I can showcase those styles, and then in that allows me to hit the broad things and sort of these more specific things, even though we're not getting really specific. But I might start you in situations that let you play with what will
Hmm.
eventually make you a great knee cut or a great side smasher or a great float passer or, a really effective outside passer. And that's like my thought. And for me, I don't immediately see like a big concern that this is going to like make them all of a sudden put the blinders on, right? And be only trying to hit this one thing, because I just haven't observed that to be what happens, over trying to teach it in this way. I've never seen someone be like, I'm just going to keep trying this knee cut, because their exposure to all the different styles. We use a style of passing to solve certain sets of problems that a partner presents to us, right? In the way that I view it. So for me, I don't think like that funneling really ruins, if you can ruin
Yeah.
someone's jujitsu, right? That's a weird thing that's hung up in our head, but like I don't think it can actually, negatively impact them. And for me, like my big thing is, if you can start identifying the styles, you can now watch people who do things well, because you can see, look, this guy is actually, he's
Hmm.
trying to work a lot of body lock style passing. Because if you knew, hey, body lock style passing, and then you watch Joseph, and like, okay, so he's doing it really high. He has like a high body lock, lots of like pummeling in the legs. Cool. I could create some activities that would help you, find that style in yourself without me necessarily doing it in such a way that it's going to like funnel you. I think it's a very weird concern people have, because people are coming often enough that will touch on everything. I think the danger is, hey, if we just do that for weeks on end, yes, maybe that type of, limitation does exist. But if I'm playing here and then there week after week, many approaches to the same problem, I think it can really limit that concern, which I don't think is like a truly super valid concern in the first
But
place in some ways.
so did I understand you right that you said Saunders doesn't do that?
Yeah, he tries to not create activities to make a certain style of jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
appear. His
Okay.
things
Okay.
are always going to be on the basic thing, that basic task to accomplish, and whatever
Yeah.
it is that he wants to
Whatever it
emphasize,
is.
say
Yeah.
access to the hips to finish it or what have you,
So
you know?
so that's I know. Let's say not because I tend to agree with you and I like you more than Souders now. Uh, it's just because you've been also doing this, and you have experience with eco and but sometimes it's like Souders, I don't know. I don't want to put him in a pedestal. That's not the point. But he's the guy that has done it maybe the longest. You could say that. So, and his experience is to not do this at all. What we just talked. And I want to actually understand his experience because he has done this. I said like 8 years and fine tuning and everything else. Then if he says you don't have to because we both feel that we can do it and we don't ruin anything and it kind of works also. But I'm very interested of his experience, why he does that and why he doesn't do, let's say, what you and I suggest, And it's okay, cool, because I also understand because the way, let's say, you described, it's actually one way to make jiu-jitsu look very complex because you just add, 10 different styles of passing. And then the reasoning is you will find your own way and blah, 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 yeah? So the question is, would you find your own way also when you're not introduced to those specific style of passing, And then you would still start to pass the guard and maybe you developed the 11th one, Understand? And so, because the end of the day, what I don't like about DVDs, let's say there's a De La Riva DVDs, yeah? Like we have let's say 6 to 10 people, let's say 5 to 10 people that are good in De La Rivas. But when they're doing the DVDs, they're showing 5 to 10 different De La Rivas, And Romulo, like even Spider Guard, Romulo Barra Spider Guard and Michael Lange Spider Guard are different, So they found, like in Spider Guard, they play like this. So now I think it's very dangerous also for us to just teach those like games that maybe there's more, let's say, more Spider Guard, more De La Riva guys, and there we're chasing different people's games. But let's say we have 10 De La Riva guys. Maybe when we do this open, end whatever the equal guard games, then we can develop 11th version, to play De La Riva, We don't have to just figure out the 10 version that those people figured out. And the problem with this is like usually with DVDs, you show me 40 sweeps, another DVD shows me 20 sweeps, and now I'm start to accumulate techniques, So the point is to figure out what makes their Riva guard work, but also that what makes it Lanki or Romula, as much as I understand, they're different. They're looking for different things, so maybe there's more different things, and we shouldn't study Romula or Lanki that much, but let people some kind of with eco games, let's say, to figure out 3rd, 5th, 12th, 100th way of doing Spider, or even say like Spider is not necessary because I know Marcelo Garcia didn't play Spider Guard, he was more / and X Guard player. So the Spider Guard and De La Riva is not really even that fundamental to Jiu-Jitsu. They're like exceptions to the guard, yeah? And so why should we teach 10 different Spider Guards and then 10 different De La Riva Guards to people? Because if it's not really fundamental and you can find your own, just don't let them pass guard and then develop your own specifics, what kind of guard you like to grip and stuff, and then go for that, because every good guard player basically has that. Very, very hard to pass the guard, and they have specific guard they're looking for, like Mendes brothers, all the Brimbolos and stuff. But they didn't play everything like everybody else played. So for me, there's always debate about that. What should I teach? Should I just teach, let's say, guard attention, get really, 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 really hard past guard, and then I basically, whatever grip you choose, you play with that, whatever comes natural for you. Because if I start to chase specifics, then it's going to be an endless game, like, endless road of techniques. And I think there should be some kind of middle ground here, but also I like your approach, and Souders doesn't do it, so I'm very interested to learn about both, I guess, and see
Mhm.
what and really dial down, or I don't know, dilute what we would really have to teach. Because let's say after 23 years, my side control top game, yes, if somebody listens to this, Preet has a top game, and my side control top game still to this day is I'm gonna block the guard, I'm gonna stop you going to turtle, and obviously bridge and roll me. I will look for underhooks and I will armbar you. Yeah. So that I'm trying to do. So this is the skills, block the hip, don't let them go to turtle, avoid the bridge and roll, look underhooks and armbar. So this is not about complexity, me knowing 20 submissions more than you do. So, but if you start to go, oh, this guy plays side control this way, that guy plays that way. So are we supposed to teach specifics? Because as you said, I like it also in a way, to expose different people to different ways of playing top, let's say, or playing guard.
Mhm.
But is this our job in a way, or how much is it our job, or do we have to let them figure out their own way? So
Mhm.
there I'm kind of philosophically struggling, because I would like to teach, like you said, those different ways of different people passing guards, but also in a way it makes it more complex. And do we? So you know what I'm getting to here.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So that's my issue with everything at the moment. So that I'm leaving kind of behind on my head, and we'll see how it solves itself.
Yeah, and it, the interesting thing for me there is like, well, when it comes to thinking of like the way when I talk about like the style thing, it's really just like I think of it as like showing you a tool, because initially if I only have one tool, I can't see the opportunities to create an action here or create an action there. Like, like if I never show you, not show you, but like if I never show you how to use an inside bicep tie as a good way to pry an elbow, let's say, or open up somebody's frame, you won't never think of it. But it would make sense for me to show you, hey, there's a strong tool we can use here. It's an inside bicep tie. Like for me, I find I don't really like teach techniques or like really emphasize that, but I try and point people to the tools and like how those tools work. So like, hey, when we're playing a De La Hiva type thing, right? I'm just going to be talking about how that hook works. It works through the connection. It works through like the surface area of the connection, right? It works the way that we can use it to force internal rotation of a knee versus a pulling function. Like that'll be, my description more so than like, hey, get to De La Hiva and we try and play this game from there. It's like, hey, these are the tools that someone might use from a De La Hiva. This is how they would use a De La Hiva hook. This is how that one piece works. For like a guarded scenario. That's going to be like how I talk about the style, is the tools people use in that style. Not necessarily, hey, we're going to funnel here and it's all about getting people to berimbolo. It's always for me, like in when I'm playing with that, it's always, hey, from a De La Hiva, from any guard, we have a couple things. We're trying to put people's hips on the mat, trying to get under their hips, or trying to submit them, right? It's a really broad, universal idea of what we're trying to do. And I always paint like my idea lots of times is, let me just show you the broadest signpost of where we could go from here. And you can figure out what tools you want to use to help you get there. And that's how I've been thinking of some of those things, because I like, I'm very rarely super descriptive in like, hey, we're going to play this to try and create this type of thing, but I'm going to give you the tools that'll help you play a De La Hiva that leads to coming underneath more, or a De La Hiva that leads to back exposure more, or, so for me, the way that like I try to balance it is, I don't really want you to be a berimbolo De La Hiva player, but I just want you to learn how to put people's hips on the floor, how to put people's hands on the floor, how to create access to underneath the hips. That is going to be how I think of that. And it'll be the same thing for a passing scenario or whatever, less so about doing these things, but hey, these are the tools, just giving you awareness of tools and the sort of function they can have. Is sort of how I've been playing with that so far.
But I'm very happy to hear that you do it differently than Souders does, whatever that means. And I'm happy to hear that there's, let's say, wiggle room, you know? And there's different expressions because, you know, the Eco versus the World Camp in Italy also, the point is to get people together that are using this method also, you know? So I'm happy that, you know, we're talking about it. And so I was always wondering how you do it, you know? And I was not that curious that I would go like, okay, let's have a WhatsApp call, you know? But I was like, okay, how do you do it? And I would know that when we meet in some point, I will ask the questions, you know? But then by then I have also more experience, so it makes sense. So I wasn't rushing it, you know? But also we have that kind of talk right now, so I got a sense of that, a little bit how you do it. And so that's also interesting. So because I'm really trying to slowly get info in how people do it and how strict they are, how not strict they are about things, you know, and because the eco language, you know, that affordances and like different things, it's like it makes it also very scientific. That's cool, but also I would like this more, I don't know, down to earth approach and human like approach for it to have. Otherwise, it's kind of like a clean science and a lot of terminology. Because I remember when I first time talked to Souders, I felt stupid, you know. It's like when we had a WhatsApp call that he threw so many like awesome scientific terms at me. I was like, oh shit, you know. And then we actually had a like more relaxed talk after that, and I was like, oh, you know, I feel like, you know, now I understand him better. And so I think it at first also for me it was also like a turn off a bit, that I was like overwhelmed with just like this and this. And first I know that Souders also changed that contextual interference. It was an information processing term, you know. But I actually practiced that word because for me it's not easy to say that, contextual interference, you know. Yeah. So it's a lot of I think the point is also what we talked earlier. Maybe we'll cycle back. It's like the beginning. I think the beginning should be easier for people to get in, and that's what we want. We want more people practicing this, you know. And at the moment, I feel the beginning is a bit rough, you know, and the people are doubting themselves and, oh, is this game right? Is this game right? You know. And I think there's templates, you know, certain things you can't go wrong with, you know, as an idea running class or idea of games, or some understanding of theories or whatever, you know. I think it's coming. I think somebody will figure it out. Somebody's as annoyed enough that can articulate it better and write it down, you know, because that happens when the, you know, method settles, you know, kind of matures. And so other people, the first adapters always have it hardest, you know, and then you have to kind of figure out on a go and kind of like trial and error a lot, too much even. And I think hopefully in coming years it gets easier to start using that method, you know, as and I really enjoy that it's not connected to Souders in a way, because you can actually read about books, you can go pick up Rob Gray, and it's not like authority based, that in that sense that, oh, Souders is the guy, you know, that we have to follow. He's done it the longest, so he has some expertise, but everybody can do their, you know, it always sounds like very new agey and like cliche, do your own research, you know. But yeah, you can dive in, and it's not really like a person connected, you know, to something. It's backed up, and so I'm really interested, you know, intrigued, and I don't know, hopeful, and where it goes, because for me it's this method has solved a lot of problems, because the main one was like, you know, both train both times, you know, there's no one is not holding pads for the other one, you know.
Yes.
So that was the main, like a wasting time thing that also I don't like with boxing and Thai boxing, let's say, somebody holds pads, you know, and then you're kind of wasting your time there. So in Jiu-Jitsu now, both have tasks, both are working. You rig the game, so one is working with late stuff, you know, one is working some early advantages, you know, but both are working. So this has been a major, and we changed our whole gym also, like all the coaches, me, Ronald and Tom, we're all aboard. We're all doing this. We're trying to get better. And we were also, even the fun part was, we were also very picky towards each other. We were like, okay, what do you thought about this class? Oh, this was bad. This was, this. We were like picking each other classes. And at a certain point, we were like, oh, we don't care anymore. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
We both know what to do better. And we got a little bit off each other backs, because we were trying to like do a perfect class,
Mm-hmm.
and use every minute of the class to the perfection, and it
Yeah.
got it got really like, oh, this 4 minutes of this drill wasn't very good, but the 56 minutes of the class was good. Yeah, but 4 minutes was yeah. So
Um,
just the last thing I would say, like, yeah, like, now we got it off of each other backs, and now we were like too much criticizing, but I think that was the phase. And now we just, all of us three kind of flowing and doing our own ways, trying to do our own ways and learn from each other a little bit. And so, yeah, I'm very happy in the moment. And I also have questions, obviously, as this talk has shown, but I'm kind of happy and to go forward and experiment. So anyway.
what's one thing that I think is sometimes not discussed is an individual coach's application is really going to vary depending on what their room is. So, for example, my room is all levels when I teach my adults, meaning I have white belts and black belts in the room. So the way that I'm going to approach and introduce and design a practice is going to be really distinct from someone who has a foundations group, sort of an advanced group and a competition group. I think sometimes we can not address that fact too, because hey, that's going to be a big reason that Greg will coach in one way, I'll coach in one way, and even further yet, you'll coach and sort of choose different things. Just, that the makeup of the room is super important. And that's sort of one of the things is like you realize how not much more work it is as a coach, but we have to be a lot more responsive to the room, the needs of the
Yeah.
room, because they move faster in terms of like what they're growing, what challenges they're hitting, whereas before, if I'm only seeing a little bit of live time from each and every student, I don't have a lot of feedback data points. It all sort of looks the same. I don't get to see the same amount of growth. Whereas now you can see change pretty quick, I find, at least in my experience. So the way that we're running it is really responsive in that sense where, I used to come, when I started sort of going this method, I would have that prescriptive plan down to the minute of we're going to do this for 6 minutes. It's going to be perfect, in this way and whatever. And now it's like, hey, I have three really broad things I would like to cover. If I
Hmm.
cover all three, awesome. If I do one and everyone is super engaged and we're able to stack and stack and stack and I can really build momentum, I'm going to do that. When I found like sometimes I can see people lesson planning and playing and they're pretty much being as prescriptive as before, but now they're like obsessing over the lesson plan. Where I think the real thing is you just have to obsess over the athlete in front of you, right? The learner in front of you. And I think that's just something, yeah, super important to keep in mind is like how that shifts too, because it really depends on your room more than anything I find than before. Because if I just have to teach a miscellaneous set of techniques, it doesn't matter who's in the room. It doesn't matter how well they're
Yeah.
doing with it. Whereas going this way, it's super important.
So now, actually, we had this many discussion with Francesco also, other Globetrotter coach, is, like you explained before, by teaching, techniques and whatever you said, is like you can even call yourself instructor, but if you put the athlete, in front of you and you go from there, then I feel you're becoming more as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and I really feel like I'm starting to become more coach now, not like a move provider, like a instructor, and I'll give you instructions, instructor. And but now it's like, okay, you manage this, you manage the athlete, it's like I even like now these days maybe the word coach even more because now I
Mm-hmm.
feel like one, So I really enjoy all the benefits that has happened, and so yeah. So I also appreciate always the talk and stuff, and then because talking always I get my thoughts right, and somebody asks, and I hear different perspective or things, And so yeah, it's I really enjoy it. It's hard in different ways, and also I don't say I dislike it, but it's difficult also obviously. But also I enjoy it immensely because I feel I fixed certain problem that I had, and
Hmm.
it really helped to progress. And because I felt something for long and I couldn't answer it, and somehow the eco just was like, ah, shit. I felt
Hmm.
right away I have to go there. And
Hmm.
so yeah, really cool.
One thing you put me on to as a coach that I started doing for a while, and it was really awesome, is you used to like, at least from my understanding, was the partner feedback. Okay,
Yeah.
we do this drill, we do this round. Do you find you do the same amount of facilitating that or less so now, or is that even more important? Because you're one of the few guys I know of who would be like instructing the athletes to, okay, partner A, tell partner B what was good, what was not so great, what they could do better. Partner B, tell partner A, okay, good, switch top and bottom, play again. Like, you were
So
the
I
first
still
guy that
use
really
it.
made me think of that.
Yeah, like it's every sports books talks about it,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I still use it. I would even say at the moment less, but not because I don't like it, because I'm trying to also keep up. I'm practicing to keep up the intensity of the class, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously feedback kind of pushes
Mm-hmm.
down. But I still do it. And obviously, yeah, so sometimes we have longer rounds, and then end of the round, we have feedback. Sometimes we switch partners a lot, so then it's hard to give feedback also. So, but I'm still for the method. I still, yeah, I know I've been using sometimes less in the
Mm-hmm.
classes. Sometimes I've even done recent classes where I haven't used because it was like a tempo class. Like for me, it was the new drill. This do okay. Do this now. Do this now. You can escape now. I gotta go to submission. Go. So
Mm-hmm.
I maybe in my cockiness, I didn't feel that they need a feedback so much. It was just a progression of drills, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go to the end. But I think I will ease with this, and yeah, I will definitely be using this. And I still love the method because the personal feedback I can never give you one.
Right.
So because it's a group and it really really helps. And I think the issue is to use it too much, so it becomes like a talkative class. And it has to be like maybe I would say with using this eco and drills and all the tasks. I think I will start to find specific times after what that feedback makes more sense.
Mm.
Or maybe before, maybe I used it too broadly, like maybe too often. But now maybe sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. So I think I also feel that all the live action from the get-go right away, from the first second of the class, with live resistance, helps to funnel this method also into the process, and I can use it like a better, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I was just curious for that because like I sort of dropped it wholesale when we started doing the constant rounds because I just felt there was so many touches and so many touches, meaning there were so many opportunities for me to win, fail, and experience that, and then immediately course correct, and then try to immediately course correct again and again and again. That I thought because we had shortened that loop in their practice between action feedback that it took care of a lot. I was just really curious if you were still playing with that.
Yeah, because I
Um,
agree with you, because you get more feedback and more repetition. That's what I mean. It's like I feel maybe I use it less, but I feel
mhm,
sometimes it's still good to use, like
mhm,
and talk about it. And in that sense, that what you felt, you corrected yourself, but also what they felt.
mhm,
And that's also sometimes like outside perspective is sometimes good. That, oh, you adapted to this, and did this, and that was interesting, and so you get kind of both your adaptation and your understanding gets better because you get feedback, a lot of trying new stuff, and also somebody else gives you to. So I think it's like as a coach, you want them to succeed, but also you kind of guiding them outside. So you want
mhm.
also kind of like a both feedback. And with this method, I agree with you. Kind of like you sometimes use it less, but I still use it, and I think it somehow even is pushed to its right place as a method.
Right.
Yeah.
No, great. Um, I would just like to ask one thing more because I love to see every coach's thought process about how they design a practice activity. So
Oh
when you're
shit.
thinking, hey, next week, or you're thinking, hey, I want to really focus in on mount escapes, for example, is what or not mount escapes, but mount as a whole. What is Preet's mental process of thinking of what he's going to design for the week and what you run through?
So, well, I can tell you what we did. It's
Mm-hmm.
because we just, we have only one class left of this. So, main thing is I wanted them to be safe, and we were concentrating of in that sense, I would say mini baby bridge, being
Mm-hmm.
under and having the hip frame, sometimes call it
Mm-hmm.
like Demian Maya, whatever, So
Mm-hmm.
mine, so it's hip frame, and then the main thing is how to keep that frame, and but the top person tried to go, let's say double underhooks,
Mm-hmm.
gift wrap underhook, and pin in the wrists.
Mm-hmm.
And my job was to not let him do that, obviously, And if he get that, kill it, go back to the hip again. So my job was to maintain that hip frame, and that allowed me then to build up my defense, or escapes later. So a couple of
Mm-hmm.
drills were first like warm up drill was just like, okay, top guy, you achieve those points. Bottom guy, just keep the frame,
Mm-hmm.
and get back to it. And then I was introducing like I think I said a couple of things wrong because now just today I corrected them. Is I was teaching like you can sit up, you can turtle, you can. But main thing was like what I was actually doing, what I couldn't say in the beginning that was really silly, is try to put if they go after your frame, try to put their one of the arms on the mat. That means off
Mm-hmm.
balance them so they can't fight
Mm-hmm.
that hip grip. So
Mm-hmm.
first I was telling them that sit up and turtle and that could be the answer. But later I was like, oh shit, what I'm doing with those things is actually I'm off balancing them. So
Mm-hmm.
and that actually is a better guide for people why they do things than just like sitting up or turtle.
Mm-hmm.
So and then it was point was though if they go to the grip, try to off balance them. Yep. Try to put their at least one arm on a mat so they have to reset the grip fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously later was like try to find an escape, try to bring them in. I call it try to bring them in front of you. That means like front guard, supine, sitting, turtle front, stand up front. You know. So the point was to escape, or also in front of in that sense like waiter sweeps and X guards. They're in front of you, but you're on your back. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't say pulling guard or whatever. I say bring them in front of you. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously that means that your legs are also in front of you. And I tell them that. So whatever you do, try to get them in front of you, and that was an escape. And then I can guide them a little bit here, a little bit there. What kind of options are there. So we played basically that game for now for 2 weeks. Now one class is left, and top guy could we added options for top guy. Top guy could like get those positions, and also later, okay, you attack the mount or you take the back. You know, and then also the game could go like wider if they escape. If you go to side control, submit or pin, to reset the game, so to speak, because
Mm-hmm.
if you pushed away from mount, you either go for a pin or maybe you get a like an attack through some darts and stuff from side control. You can take a risk of going submission. So we gave them periphery ideas, and then we just like a little bit like fluctuated the reality, like a complexity just in mount, and if you escape, it's done. But then, okay, you can now counter escape. Okay, you can take the back, go to the hooks, 3-5 seconds, or also if they get to like knees, like some elbow knee escapes, you can abandon mount, go for a pin, or go for submissions. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like periphery work what comes with escaping.
Right.
And so that was kind of brief introduction. But we started every class with the frame, and then we built from there. Like and also today we started from half guard actually, already like a hook in, like bottom leg is pinned. You have
Mm-hmm.
a like a cross face. Either you have a underhook head, you have a underhook, and you have a underhook. Sorry, head and underhook. So
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of different, all three different head and arm or double arm positions. And then the point was that the defender had minus, and the top guy had to go to the mount, and your job was to find a way to establish the hip frame and start to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like we try to kind of like tie it to the passing a little bit, to integrate the this idea with different games. So half guard was what we used. And so top person, choose a good position that is really nice control, go to mount and try to, submit or take the back. Bottom person establish the mount frame and try to escape, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of
Nice.
how we ended up with this. So, and I was pretty happy. So only thing I was like, yeah, oh shit, I should have told them like off balance them, not to like sit up and turtle. So because it was like, what's the function again? I slipped there. So and I
Mm-hmm.
should have said, okay, off balance is a function, sitting up is an action to do that function.
Yeah.
So I still slip sometimes, telling them specifics instead of function. I was like, shit. So that's those moments I enjoy when I kind of slip.
And it's interesting so for me, I follow a similar thing. In some of those scenarios, especially in mount or escape scenarios, I really talk about what I want my partner's body to do. And in the mount, hey, I want them to either have to put their hand on the mat or get their knee off the mat. And I know if
Yeah.
like one of those two things happen, I'm probably gonna have like the situation that allows me to create an escape. So like
Mm.
for me, I like, off balance is vague sometimes. It makes sense off balance, but like what does an off balance look like? It looks like them posting, or it looks like their knee getting off the floor, right? Then I can see I created an off
Yeah.
balance because they had to do a weight shift. So that's been the thing that, like, for me in the evolution, I very much started with language more akin to you. And I realized, like, if I just tell this brand new person to not let that person's knees stay on the floor, they're pretty good at doing whatever they need to try and create that effect.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of my language in like those games is like, what is the precursor effect that happens? Even like in a guarded scenario, hey, if I'm playing like a hooks guard, like butterfly, hey, I know if I can get their hand to the mat or their head to the mat, a sweep or a great attack follows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I center my students' attention on that when I'm thinking of like creating the activity. Yeah, that was cool though. I just love to hear how another coach is thinking about it, because when we have these type of conversations, hopefully it makes it seem less like magic voodoo stuff where you have to
Yeah.
be, really dialed in, and people can see, it's an iterative process. We play with things, they fail, we realize it's a language thing or a constraints thing, and we can adapt and move, right? So I'm really glad we can share a little bit about
Yeah.
how you're
Because
doing it,
your
because
your cue is also very awesome in that sense. Try to create an action that the function of the knee comes up. So I
mm-hmm,
was trying to put their arms on a mat so they lose a balance, but also knee. So I love those kind of nuggets, like you said. I will steal it from you and claim it my own.
perfect.
And so it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. But it's sometimes hard to come up with that nugget. Oh, lift the knee. Make them
Mm-hmm,
lift the knee. Oh shit, yeah, then I can do every pass. But it's
mm-hmm,
now, so that's why I love talking to coaches and stuff like this. That the nuggets, what's the function? And then obviously it helps me to find other functions if I learned enough functions. And then, oh,
mm-hmm,
this here, oh, same idea maybe applies. I find the function easier. First, if you're looking for functions, they're quite hard at the beginning. Like, what is the function here? And
mm-hmm.
then, but learning from different people how they add function, always like, that makes so much sense. So I'm actually a big fan of the function thing, like you said right now with the knee. So I was like, oh shit, yes, exactly. And now I hate you
Mm-hmm.
for it because I couldn't come up with that myself, because when you say the function knee up, you go like, it's so easy. But to come
Mm-hmm.
up with the easy function, that's actually it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
I
why
really,
we're trying to chat like this,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
really cool. Yeah, really cool.
Man, Preet, I've taken a ton of your time. This is probably a good place to wrap. I think we got to
Okay. Yeah.
cover a lot of stuff. Hopefully, you got a lot of it. So far, I think the best thing has been like, find both coaches are just getting a lot of this chat. And then hopefully
Yeah.
that means anyone who hops in and listens to us ramble and my earpods falling out of my head for an hour and whatever else, they get something good out of it too.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that we did this. So it's like I love the push the method. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's useful for people. So if it helps anybody, really happy. If they want to get in contact, really happy. And also
Hmm.
I got your nugget from you. I'm very happy. So all good.
Perfect. Man, thanks so much, Preet. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Talk to
Wow.
you later.